Hi, and welcome to the Witchy School. This video is the Witchy FAQ, or Frequently Asked Questions. In this video, we will talk about the questions that I, Katrina, get asked regarding being a witch in today's society. And I do get asked questions a lot on my blog, and because I'm pretty well out on Facebook and that sort of thing. My name is Katrina Rasbold. I have a squeaky desk chair. Hear this? Now, of course, it won't do it. So you're going to hear that from time to time. So don't think we're haunted or anything. We might be, but it's really just my chair squeaking. Oh, there it went. See, did you hear that? There it went. There it went. Anyway, back to our video. We are going to talk about the questions that I often get asked. And this is an attempt to educate the public on the difference between a Wiccan and a witch and different aspects of witchcraft that you may not know. There are a lot of lies and misunderstandings that have been perpetrated over many years, and of course me just saying it isn't going to make them go away, but maybe it'll educate a person or two and they will be able to know the truth of something from someone who has done it for many, many years. And usually those are the people who actually know what's going on, or the ones who are in it, as opposed to the ones who are just afraid of it. So we're going to talk about the questions that I'm asked. Now, I don't give this information as any attempt to convert anyone. I don't have any interest in converting anyone. We're not out there trying to bring the masses in or anything like that. You know, if you're meant for this path, you'll be led to it, and it'll come to you. But in the meantime, for those of us who have been led to this path, it's better for us, and we enjoy it more if people know the truth about us rather than all of the misinterpretations that go around. So this is purely an educational situation. Now, I cannot speak for all witches any more than one Christian can speak for all Christians, or one Jewish person for all Jewish people. And so I'm just saying that this is how I practice, and how really most of the people I've met over the last 30 years have practiced. We each have little nuances that are different, but overall we pretty much do the same thing. And I think that most of the witches that I have known would agree with the things I'm going to say here. So, and if you don't, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. So let's proceed with the Witchy FAQ. First, how many witches and Wiccans are there in the United States? And before we get started on that, I just want to tell you I have notes down here. See the notes? So I can remember what to tell y'all, because I'm old and forget things. And also because I'm old, I'm blind as a bat. So I've got these glasses. Now watch. When I do that, look at that glare, pretty bad. But if I pull down on my nose, then that it looks sassy, plus I can read and not blind you guys. So I apologize for any glare that does happen to hit you. How many witches and Wiccans are there in the United States? The last information we have was compiled in 2008 by religionstolerance.org and by the ARIS, which is the American Religious Identification Survey, and also the U.S. Census. That data combined estimates approximately 408,000 people in the United States who specifically identified themselves as Wiccan. Now, there are also approximately 70,000 or so people who identified themselves as non-Wiccan pagans. This includes Druids, Asatrues, recreationists, and just people who are witches or pagans who do not affiliate themselves with Wicca specifically. And then, of course, there are people who chose not to identify their religion because they figure it's nobody's business. And that's just fine, too. Now, when you consider of those 478,000 people, that there are also children in those families. And, of course, if we have a pagan parent group, we usually have pagan children as well, then we got to figure that that rises to around 750,000 people, and that's a hoop of people in the United States. And that was many years ago, in fact, and it's been rising ever since. Now, if we don't count those children, Wicca itself is then placed in the 7th largest organized religion in the United States. That's larger than Society of Friends, which is the Quakers, larger than the Baha'i Faith, and larger than Sikhism. Our next question, what is the difference in a witch and a Wiccan? And there is a difference. And for a long time, a lot of, even if you want to say professional, witches didn't delineate the difference, but there is quite a difference in being a witch and being a Wiccan. Now, both of the words come from the same Old English words, which were wita, and that means to bend or to conform. It can also mean the wise ones, because the witches were the wise people of the village who were consulted for any number of important things such as when to go on the hunt and the turn of the seasons and when to plant and many different things before the witches were maligned. But this isn't an ugly FAQ, so we're not going to go too heavily into that. A witch specifically is someone who honors nature, honors the earth, and the energies that are inherent in nature and the earth and its creatures. And what a witch does is she uses those energies in order to work in harmony with nature to produce positive outcomes. A witch may or may not be Wiccan, but a Wiccan is usually a witch. A Wiccan is someone who practices the specific religious path of Wicca. Wicca was actually developed in the 1950s by a man named Gerald Gardner, and it is a very ritualized religious path. Whereas being a witch, you don't necessarily have to perform rituals or have to believe a certain thing spiritually other than your kinship to the earth and honoring the earth and all the creatures who live there. Now, personally, I'm a witch. I'm not a Wiccan. I practice cusp, which has a lot of Wiccan elements to it. In my practice, it doesn't have to. It's very adaptable. But because I was Wiccan for so many years, there are a lot of those practices that carry over for me. Being a witch is a way of life. It is a way that you live in this world, and when you are a witch, everything you do comes back to the fact that you are seeing the world through a witch's eyes, and you are seeing energy movement, and you are processing energy on an ongoing basis to better your life and the life of those around you. Being a Wiccan is a choice of religious practice. And again, some witches are, some witches are not. Not all witches use rituals, as I said. Not all witches use spell work. Some just work in harmony with nature and live their lives with a real acute awareness of the energies in the world and work to be in sync with those. Pagan, on the other hand, is a whole different word. Pagans are known as people of the earth. Heathens, on the other hand, were people of the heath, and they were people who lived and worked closely with the land. Now, when Christianity began to come into force, it started out in the courts with aristocracy, and so it was seen as the cool thing to do, whereas these lowly pagans who were still worshiping pagan gods and rearing nature were the nerds of the group. And so being a pagan or being a heathen was kind of, the low level of society. Also, they were considered to be godless because their interpretation of God was a little bit different than the Christian interpretation of God. And honestly, the pagans I know are anything but godless. We got plenty of gods. So really, if you were to break it down and try to do a comparison, if I think about Christianity, which is the most well-known, structured, organized religion, we have Christians, and if you broke it down a little bit further, we could say that there are Protestants, and then, just for sake of categorization, there are Baptists. So Baptists are Protestants, Protestants are Christians. So that's the delineation of labels there. We can apply that same thing to witches, Wiccans, and pagans. Pagan is like Christianity. It's a very broad label that covers many different paths. Wicca is, back that up, witch would be kind of like Protestant. It's in the middle, and the witches may or may not be Wiccan. Wicca would be akin to Baptist, and then it's a religious path that comes from witch and pagan. So that's kind of the breakdown of it there. The next question is, don't witches worship the devil? And no, no, we just don't. In fact, the concept of a devil or Satan or Lucifer is purely a Christian concept, and we don't embrace that particular mythology any more than the Christians get into what we believe as far as our mythologies and stories. We don't really see evil as being something that is localized to an entity. We see that as a widespread, permeating situation that largely develops from humans themselves. Now, the way that our God was considered to be Satan is that back in the olden days, when people wanted to think of a god, they thought of what is the closest and most powerful thing in nature that is right in front of me, and in that case it was the stag. And so when they thought of what God would look like to them, God had antlers like a stag. And so when it came about that Christianity wanted to malign the pagans and say that they were of the devil, it happened, even though this is not described this way in the Bible, that they gave the devil horns like the stag, or horns to represent the horned god, which was the stag. So it's kind of a complicated thing, and there are lots of books to read up on that. But no, we don't worship the devil any more than Christians worship the devil. In fact, we don't even believe in the devil. There is Baphomet, who is a goat god. This is a Satanist deity, and we are not Satanists any more than Christians are Satanists. Satanism has nothing to do with Wicca or witchcraft. I hate to disappoint, but we don't do black mass, we don't have any inverted crosses, and we don't say the Lord's Prayer backward. We also weigh more than a duck, and we do actually drown if you throw us in water. So the next question is, if witches don't worship the devil, and they sure don't worship our God, who do they worship? Most witches fall into one of two categories. One is that they believe that there is a power that is unknowable by humans, that is huge and big and omniscient and in charge, basically, of all that moves. And they then break down that power into several different faces. And that's because it's very approachable to be able to honor different aspects of God that depended upon your own needs. So if you're interested in childbirth, you would want to talk to the goddess of childbirth, which makes it very specific. Because we revere nature, we do believe in a god and a goddess, because in all things in nature there is the male and female counterpart. So it's kind of a Christian thing to have just the patriarchal God. We worship a god and a goddess because in nature there is both male and female. As my son put it, this is all different taps on the same keg of beer. Now the other thing about, I said there were two schools of thought. The other school of thought is that there are actual specific gods and goddesses that are not from one greater whole, that they are individuals who have specific personalities and are of their own containment. So to our mind, we do worship the same God that everybody else does. It just has a different name, different faces that are relatable to us. The next question is, you said you don't believe in Satan. Do you not believe that there's evil in the world? Oh, Lord, yes, there's evil in the world, sweetheart. But we believe that, at least most of us believe, that evil comes from the ego and the intentions of people, not from outside sources. And that is what drives people, is their innermost ego and their innermost desires and needs. And that actually, because witches are very big on accountability, we tend to shun the idea that you blame something else for what you do, and we believe that you should absolutely take responsibility for who you are and what you do in the world. Next question. Don't Wiccans and pagans hate all Christians? Absolutely not. We love the Christians. Much of my family are Christians. I enjoyed being a Christian and just had some very specific philosophical differences that caused me to break away. No. We do not hate all Christians. We hate assholes. And we don't even hate assholes. We're just intolerant of assholes. And I've known people I didn't care for who were pagan, and I've known people I didn't care for who were Christian and were Buddhist. And, it really is about, for nearly all witches and Wiccans and pagans, who are you in this world and how do you treat your fellow man? That's what we care about. What path you take to exalt the Lord and to the God and to be who you are and to find yourself spiritually, that's up to you. And we're grateful for there being a lot of paths, because we have so many different people who need to speak different languages spiritually. But no, we don't hate all Christians. We just don't enjoy intolerant, awful people. And they can come from any walk of life. Next question. Don't witches cast spells and make potions and use things like bat wings, eyes of newt, and that sort of thing? Yes, we do. We cast spells. We make potions. It's sort of like proactive prayer. You're praying, but you're putting energy into it and other natural ingredients that are sympathetic to what you're doing. Just like when you pray the rosary, you're really focusing and you're moving your hands, and that is what we would call a form of spell work. We might use rhyming or chanting and different ways of focusing on things, using candles and all different kinds of props, and we enjoy it. We believe in the energy that is in stones and in plants, that possibly we just don't have the scientific tools to track that energy yet. It doesn't mean it's not there. For years, centuries, thousands of years, witches, for instance, used white willow bark to ease pain, and that was considered magic. Well, now we know that white willow bark is actually an active ingredient in aspirin. So it's really just a matter of catching up to what witches have known for a really, really long time. Now the joke is, and this was always kind of funny, where the people got all excited and up in arms over some of the ingredients we use, the names were actually folk names for different herbs. For instance, colt's foot, and maidenhair, and dragon's blood, bone set, and semen of Hermes is another great favorite. Those are all herbs and roots, and that was the folk name for them. Bone of ibis, for instance, is buckthorn, which is often used in spells. Cronus's blood was cedar. Titan's blood, you might have had some of that for lunch today, it's lettuce. Bat wings were holly leaves, in fact. Sparrow's tongue was knot grass. Graveyard dirt was, well, that was graveyard dirt, but that's a whole other class altogether. They all had healing properties, and they all had magical energy properties that we use. But no, we did not actually use the tongue of a sparrow or the wing of a bat. It's actually just an herb. Do you put hexes on people? Well, if they need it, I guess I could. I don't do that very often because it has a lot of karmic blowback on it, but we do have rules. If you want to say it, natural rules to what we do, and the primary rule in Wicca is harm none, and you have to consider all the ways you can harm a person. You don't just harm them physically, you can harm them mentally, emotionally, sexually, socially, and so we have to take a huge consideration whenever we're going to do any type of spell work that involves another person and how it's going to affect their life. So no, witches do not, as a rule, put hexes on people because we believe in the threefold law, which means that whatever we put out there is going to come back to us threefold. That is a concept that is also embraced in Christianity, where it says bread thrown upon the water of life will come back threefold. So that isn't just witchcraft that believes that. That is a universal human belief that what you put out there is going to come back to you. And we don't like to put things out there that are going to be messy and splatter back on us unless they're good things. Do witches perform animal and human sacrifices? And didn't they used to do that? And yes, they absolutely did. Witches, pagans, druids all performed human and animal sacrifices, and so did the Christians. And there was a time in human development where this was a normal and typical practice. And if you think about it, when Mary and Joseph were taking those little doves to Bethlehem for the census and going to the temple with them, that was not going to be a pretty surprise at the morning where all the doves are released at sunrise. No, they were going to sacrifice those birds. In the Old Testament, in fact, Abraham was about to sacrifice his favorite son, Isaac, because God had asked him to do this. And God, at the last minute, provided a ram to step in and be the sacrifice. All religions sacrificed at one time, and all stopped right around the same time, or most stopped around the same time. But in this day and time, there are almost no religions that do provide any type of human or animal or live sacrifice, and Wicca and witchcraft do not use a living sacrifice. Okay, what is it about flying ointments and the fat of an unbaptized baby? Well, as appetizing as that might sound, no, we do not use those. Flying ointments were actually an ointment that contained belladonna, and so it gave you the feeling of being high and sometimes the feeling of flying. The idea of the unbaptized baby fat was actually part of the witch hysteria that was initiated by those who wanted to malign the witches. Because, I mean, who would you go after faster than a baby killer? But no, witches don't kill babies. We have no interest in killing babies, and it goes against our fundamental belief in the protection of life. So no unbaptized babies boiling in the cauldrons, and sadly not too much flying ointment with the belladonna in it anymore. Next question. So what is a warlock? Is that a male witch? That originated primarily on the show Bewitched, which I just loved, but they called their male witches warlocks. And no, warlock actually means an oath breaker. And it was a term that was reserved for absolutely the most reviled of all witches. And that was the ones that would betray their coven mates and out them as witches, which in a time that this word was used could mean their death, and probably would mean their death. And so warlock is not something you would ever want to call a witch, whether they're male or female, because it's a very horrible term. A male witch is still just called a witch. It's not a gender-specific word. Next question. Don't witches have orgies and naked rituals? I should be so lucky. But, yeah, they do. I don't. Different paths practice in different ways. There are some groups that actually believe that getting rid of the clothing makes them closer to nature, and that it also removes any status symbol in the sense of how you're dressing, the social status of your clothing. And it's between coven to coven and group to group as to whether they do or they don't. And no, we don't. And I've honestly never worked with a group that actively did work, as it's called, skyclad, or practice in the nude. But yeah, they're out there, and they do, and they have their particular reasons for it, most of which are not sexual. They're actually socially motivated. But no, I don't. What about your children? Oh, this is a good one. I like this one. What about your children? Don't they need spiritual guidance? Well, yes, they do. And I give them spiritual guidance, and I work hard to teach my children how to be good people. And really, when you think about it, that's what it comes down to, is teaching young people how to be good, responsible, accountable people. And pagans and witches and Wiccans do that just as much as people of any other faith. Next question. Don't you believe in demons and such? Some Wiccans do. Some witches do. Jury's out for me. I have done house clearing where there's a house that appears to have an infestation of poltergeist or other manifestations that are happening. But more commonly what I have found is that when you're having something that looks demonic, or like a house is possessed or haunted, it's usually got to do with the manifestation of human energy that's occurring rather than something otherworldly. And we should do a witchy school class on haunted houses. That would be fun. Yeah, let's look into that. But no, I don't really much believe in demons too much. I'm open to the idea they could be there, but in 30 years I haven't seen anything that has proven it to me. What is the difference between white witchcraft and black magic? This is always really a cute question that people ask. For one thing, you wouldn't go up to someone and say, but are you a good Christian? Or are you a bad Christian? Are you a good witch or are you a bad witch? No, you're a witch. And witches have such a degree of accountability you would not even believe for how they practice. And white witchcraft is a word that came up many, many, many decades ago that would supposedly identify witches who did not practice black magic. And honestly, witches do not practice black magic, or baneful magic as it's now called, the dark arts, because of that karmic blowback that we discussed. And it takes a huge amount of energy. It's absolutely exhausting to perform magical acts that are not in keeping with the natural flow. And when you work in the natural flow, you just automatically don't do those things that are harmful and malicious. So no, witches don't practice white witchcraft or black magic. They actually just practice witchcraft without the colors associated. And we don't have a negativity regarding the word black, or a particular positivity about the word white. All colors are beautiful and amazing and have their own magical attributes. Black magic and white witchcraft is pretty much a bunch of crap that's thrown together by media hounds who are looking to make a buck. And if you find books that say The Art of White Witchcraft or How to Work Black Magic, you can guarantee it was written by somebody who is not a witch, has never been a witch, and has no interest in being a witch. They just want to make money. The last question, this is the one that I'm most commonly asked, what do you witches want? What are witches after in this world? What do you want from society? And you know what? All we want is freedom. All we want is the ability to believe as we believe, work as we work, worship as we worship, love the God and Goddess as we do, without interference coming from any direction on that. We look for people to follow our mandate, which is harm none, including us. Don't be a harmful person in this world. Witches do not, as I said at the beginning of this, seek to convert. We don't proselytize. We don't go out as fishers of men and try to bring in people to the craft. We honestly trust the plot process and believe that those who are meant to be witches will be led here. And there will be people here to teach them as there were to teach us. and they will be our brothers and sisters in the craft. And for those who are not, we love them too. And as long as no one is maligning us or harming us or trying to squeeze us into their belief system, then we have no interest in affecting any kind of change or interfering with how anyone else believes, because we believe in freedom of religion and we believe in freedom from religion. We believe that everyone should find their own way and their own path to God that makes them their most highest and sacred self. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, that sums up the questions I am most frequently asked about being a witch. If you have questions, feel free to submit them. My email address is katrina@witchyschool.com. Thank you for listening.